like, and make sure to engage in comments. Also, share this video to your friends and story lovers, and click on the subscribe button on the screen to subscribe to Mortifex for more real horror stories like this. The night was supposed to be perfect. Candles flickered along the dining table, their golden glow casting soft shadows across the room. A bouquet of red roses sat in the center, surrounded by 2 wine glasses filled with deep crimson liquid. The scent of a home-cooked meal hung in the air, mingling with the faint traces of vanilla-scented candles. Mark had spent the entire day making everything perfect for their 10th wedding anniversary. He wanted it to be special. He had been feeling off lately, maybe just stress from work, or maybe something deeper. But tonight wasn't about that. It was about celebrating a decade of love with his wife, Lisa. She was late, but that wasn't unusual. Lisa had a habit of getting caught up in things. Shopping, long chats with friends, or just losing track of time. Mark sighed, checking his watch again. Half an hour past their planned dinner. He picked up his phone, scrolling through messages, but there was nothing from her. Something gnawed at his gut, an uneasy feeling, like an itch in his brain he couldn't scratch. He tried to shake it off, convincing himself that she would walk through the door any second, all smiles, apologizing for running late. But as the minutes stretched into an hour and then another, the feeling of unease grew heavier. Mark tried to rationalize it. Maybe her phone was dead. Maybe she had a surprise planned for him and was just running late. He poured himself another glass of wine, but the tension in his chest wouldn't fade. Then his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. His heart thudded as he clicked on it. The message contained no words, just a single image. Lisa. But not just Lisa. Lisa and his brother Jake, together. At first, his brain refused to process what he was seeing. It had to be a mistake. Maybe it was an old picture. Maybe it was just harmless. But as he stared at the image, his stomach twisted. The intimate way they were holding each other. The unmistakable setting of a hotel room. Lisa's face tilted towards Jake's, lips dangerously close to his. It was undeniable. The air left Mark's lungs in a silent gasp. His hands shook as he gripped the phone tighter. His head spun, disbelief washing over him in waves. This had to be some kind of sick joke. He felt his heartbeat hammering in his chest, his breath quickening. Without thinking, he grabbed his keys and stormed out of the house. His mind was a blur of emotions: anger, pain, betrayal. The restaurant where they had planned to celebrate was just 10 minutes away, but he knew she wasn't there. The image on his phone told him where she was, and if he needed any more proof, another text followed. An address. He knew the place. A cheap motel on the outskirts of town. Mark's hands clenched the steering wheel as he drove, white-knuckled, his vision blurring with rage and heartbreak. His mind replayed every moment he had spent with Lisa, every promise they had made. He thought of Jake, his younger brother, the man he had trusted his whole life. How long had this been going on? How could they do this to him? The motel parking lot was nearly empty, the neon sign buzzing dimly overhead. Mark didn't hesitate. He stormed inside, his body moving before his brain could catch up. The receptionist barely glanced at him as he scanned the room keys on the wall. Room 214. His breathing was ragged as he made his way up the stairs, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. His hands trembled as he reached for the doorknob, but it was locked. Of course, it was locked. But Mark wasn't thinking rationally anymore. His fist pounded against the door. "Lisa, open this door!" Silence. He pounded again, his voice louder this time. "I swear to God, Lisa, open this damn door." A muffled rustling from inside, then footsteps. The door cracked open just slightly, and there she was. Lisa, wrapped in a bedsheet, her eyes wide with shock. Behind her, Mark saw Jake scrambling to put his clothes on, his face draining of color. For a moment, time stood still. Mark's chest ached, his breath hitching as reality crashed over him like a tidal wave. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, his whole body trembling. Lisa opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. Jake took a step forward, his hands raised as if to calm Mark down. "Listen, man, just..." But Mark couldn't listen. His heart slammed against his ribs. His vision tunneled, his knees buckled, and suddenly, everything went black. The last thing he heard was Lisa's scream. Mark didn't feel his body hit the ground. One moment, he was standing at the door, his mind shattering into pieces. And the next, everything went dark. Lisa's scream pierced the air. Jake rushed forward, his face contorted in panic. He grabbed Mark's shoulders, shaking him, but there was no response. His brother's body was eerily still, eyes open, but lifeless. "Oh my God," Lisa gasped, backing away. Her hands trembled as she clutched the bedsheet around her. "Oh my God, Jake, do something." Jake pressed his fingers against Mark's neck, searching desperately for a pulse. His own heartbeat thundered in his ears. "Come on, man," he muttered, his voice shaking. He pressed his ear against Mark's chest. The rise and fall of his breathing were wrong. Too shallow, too weak. Then it stopped. "No, no, no, no!" Jake's voice cracked as he pounded his fists against Mark's chest, attempting CPR. "Stay with me, man." Lisa was crying now, her hands covering her mouth, her whole body trembling. "Jake, is he..." Jake didn't answer. His hands pressed harder, pushing into Mark's ribcage, trying to force his heart to start again. "Breathe, damn it!" A minute passed, then two, and Mark didn't move. Lisa collapsed to her knees, her breath hitching with sobs. "He's dead," she whispered. The words barely escaped her lips. Her voice was so small, so fragile, like she didn't believe it herself. Jake sat back on his heels, his hands coated in sweat and shaking uncontrollably. His mind raced. This wasn't supposed to happen. None of this was supposed to happen. Mark was dead, not just unconscious, not just hurt. He was gone. His heart had given out. The shock of betrayal too much for his body to handle. Lisa sobbed harder. "What do we do, Jake? What do we do? Oh my God." Jake's mind was spinning, his throat dry. He had no idea what to do. Call an ambulance. But what would they say? That Mark found them together in bed, suffered a cardiac arrest, and died right there on the spot? The scandal alone would destroy them. His marriage, his reputation, his life. Lisa was already spiraling, rocking back and forth on the floor, her hands tangled in her hair. "We can't, Jake, we can't let people know." Jake looked at her, his stomach twisting. She wasn't worried about Mark. Not really. She was worried about what people would think, what his family would think. And yet, he wasn't any better. He didn't want this to destroy his life either. His breath was shallow. We have to call someone. Lisa's bloodshot eyes snapped to his. And say what? That we killed him? We didn't kill him, Jake snapped. Though even as he said it, the words felt hollow. They hadn't physically hurt Mark, but they might as well have. Their betrayal had ripped the life out of him. Lisa's voice was a whisper now. We have to get rid of the body. Jake's stomach twisted into knots. Are you insane? We can't just leave him here. She scrambled to her feet, gripping Jake's arm. Think, Jake. If people find out what happened, they'll find out eventually, Jake shot back, his voice hoarse. He's a missing person the second someone realizes he's gone. Lisa shook her head, her face pale and streaked with tears. We need to think. But neither of them could think. An hour passed, then 2. Mark's body lay motionless on the hotel room floor, the dim light making his face look even paler. His eyes were still half open, staring at the ceiling. Jake couldn't look at him for too long without feeling like those dead eyes were judging him. Then there was a knock at the door. Lisa gasped, her body going rigid. Jake's breath hitched. His heart pounded so violently, he thought it would explode. The knock came again, firm, insistent. Jake put a finger to his lips, signaling Lisa to stay quiet. He tiptoed toward the peephole, hands shaking, every nerve in his body on high alert. He sucked in a sharp breath as he saw who it was. A security guard. Lisa must have seen the panic in his eyes because she started shaking her head. What do we do? She mouthed. Jake didn't know. The guard knocked a 3rd time. Sir, ma'am? There were noise complaints coming from this room. Is everything okay? Jake clenched his jaw. Noise complaints? Of course. Mark's fall, Lisa's scream. It was only a matter of time before someone got suspicious. Lisa took a deep breath, wiped her face, and whispered, I'll handle it. Jake's eyes widened. Lisa, no. But she was already unlocking the door, opening it just a crack. The guard peered inside, his expression neutral but watchful. Sorry to disturb you, ma'am. We received a report about shouting from this room. Lisa forced a small, shaky smile. Oh, that was just me. I saw a spider. She laughed, but it was too thin, too forced. I have really bad arachnophobia. The guard frowned, his eyes shifting past her shoulder. You sure? It sounded like... Lisa nodded quickly. Yeah, everything's fine. Really. My husband just left a little while ago, so it's just me here now. Jake's stomach turned. He wanted to scream at her for lying like that, but what other choice did they have? The guard hesitated, then nodded. All right, ma'am. Sorry to bother you. As soon as the door shut, Lisa turned to Jake, her hands shaking worse than ever. Jake swallowed hard, running a hand through his hair. We're screwed. Lisa grabbed him, her nails digging into his arms. We have to get him out of here. And so, they did the unthinkable. They wrapped Mark's body in the hotel bedsheet, lifting him carefully. He was heavier than either of them expected. Dead weight. Literal dead weight. Their muscles screamed in protest, their breath coming in short gasps. The whole time, Lisa kept whispering, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, over and over again. But Jake didn't want to hear it. He just wanted this nightmare to end. They dragged Mark down the hallway, praying no one would see them. The elevator was too risky, so they took the stairs, step by agonizing step, until they reached the parking lot. Jake's hands were slick with sweat as he popped the trunk of his car. Lisa hesitated. Then, together, They lifted Mark's body and placed him inside. The second the trunk shut, Lisa let out a shaky breath. Now what? Jake stared at her, his mind spinning. They had crossed a line they could never uncross. And the worst part? This wasn't over, not even close. Jake gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. Lisa sat beside him, staring blankly out the windshield, her face pale, her breathing shallow. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them knew what to say. The body of Mark, his brother, her husband, lay in the trunk, wrapped in a hotel bedsheet, lifeless and cold. They had done the unthinkable. The hotel parking lot was nearly empty at this hour, but paranoia crawled under Jake's skin like fire ants. Every shadow looked like a cop. Every car that passed felt like it slowed down, just a little too much. His hands were slick with sweat. Lisa finally broke the silence. Where are we taking him? Jake's throat was dry. He had no answer. Somewhere far, he muttered, pulling the car out of the lot and onto the empty street. Somewhere no one will find him. Lisa swallowed hard. The woods? Jake clenched his jaw. Too risky. People hike, camp. We need somewhere isolated, but not suspicious. Lisa turned to look at him, her eyes wide and glassy. You sound like you've done this before. He shot her a glare. I haven't. But I don't have the luxury of breaking down right now, Lisa. She flinched, looking away. He almost regretted snapping at her. Almost. The city lights faded behind them as they drove into the outskirts, past abandoned buildings, warehouses, stretches of highway that felt like the middle of nowhere. The silence between them was suffocating. Then Lisa's phone rang. She jumped, fumbling to grab it. Jake glanced at the screen and felt his stomach drop. Mark's name was flashing on the screen. Lisa gasped, her fingers trembling as she clutched the phone. What the? The ringing stopped. Then a text came through. Where are you? Jake slammed on the brakes. The tires screeched, the car skidding slightly before coming to a jerky stop on the side of the road. Lisa was hyperventilating now. Jake, what the hell is happening? Jake's pulse pounded in his ears. He yanked the phone from her hand, rereading the text. His hands shook. This wasn't possible. Mark was dead. Dead. He was in the trunk, unless someone else had his phone. Jake's breath came in ragged gasps. Check the trunk, he said hoarsely. Lisa's eyes widened in horror. No way. Check the damn trunk. She hesitated, then, with trembling hands, pushed open the car door and stepped out. The night air was thick and suffocating. A lonely stretch of road, no streetlights, just their car, the darkness, and whatever was waiting for them in the trunk. Jake followed, his heart slamming against his ribs. He reached into his pocket, gripping the car keys like a lifeline. Lisa stood a few feet away, hugging herself, her breath coming in sharp, panicked bursts. Jake inserted the key into the trunk lock, hesitated for a fraction of a second, then lifted it. The trunk creaked open. Lisa let out a strangled gasp. It was empty. The sheet, the body, gone. Jake staggered back, his head spinning. No, 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 no. This isn't possible. Lisa was shaking uncontrollably. We put him in there, Jake. We put him in there. Where is he? Jake's pulse pounded in his ears. He felt dizzy, sick. He reached for his phone with numb fingers and called Mark's number. It rang, then stopped. A second later, a new text came through. You shouldn't have done that. Jake's breath caught in his throat. His body turned ice cold. Lisa was sobbing now, clutching her head. This isn't real. This isn't real. Then, a car engine roared in the distance. Jake's head snapped up. A pair of headlights appeared far down the road, growing closer. The eerie glow illuminated the surrounding darkness, cutting through the thick, suffocating night. The car was coming straight for them. Jake grabbed Lisa's wrist. "Get in the car, now!" Lisa didn't move. "Jake, what if it's, get in the damn car!" She snapped out of it, scrambling into the passenger seat as Jake slammed the trunk shut and leaped behind the wheel. His fingers fumbled with the keys, and for one horrifying moment, the engine wouldn't start. The approaching car sped up. Lisa let out a terrified whimper. "Jake!" Jake twisted the key again. The engine roared to life. He slammed the gas pedal, peeling out onto the road, tires screeching against the asphalt. The car behind them accelerated. Jake's hands were slippery with sweat as he gripped the wheel. "Who the hell is that?" Lisa clutched the dashboard, her breathing erratic. "It's him! It has to be him!" Jake's mind was racing. This wasn't possible. Mark was dead. He had no pulse. They carried his lifeless body. He had been in the trunk. But now, he was gone. And someone, or something, was chasing them. The car behind them gained speed. The headlights were so close now that they bathed the interior of Jake's car in an unnatural glow. Then, the texts came, one after another. "You think this is over? You think I didn't see everything? I'm coming for you!" Jake's hands shook violently. His foot pressed harder against the gas pedal. The speedometer climbed. 70 miles per hour, 80, 90. Lisa was crying. "Jake, he's dead. He's dead. So who is that?" Jake had no answers. He could barely think, barely breathe. Then, a figure appeared in the middle of the road. Lisa screamed. Jake's instincts took over. He jerked the wheel to avoid hitting the figure, the tires losing traction. The car skidded wildly, spinning out of control. The last thing Jake saw before everything went black was Mark's face, standing in the road, staring right at him, and smiling. Click on the subscribe button on the screen to subscribe to Mort Effects for more real and true stories like this.